I don't know how this video is going to be structured. I want to take the time talking about my feelings and thoughts and ramblings without making things overly structured, because although this video is about my dad, this is also a video about how losing him has fundamentally changed me in a way that I will attempt to put into words. When I met my dad, I was fresh out of my mom. Literally was the first human being to hold me besides my mother. He held me before my mother, if anything. I remember my mom told me this verbatim. Him and her always used to like gush over this every single birthday that I had, because he would always be at every birthday, baby. Every birthday. But every single birthday that I had, they gushed about how when I was born, my dad looked at me and he said to my mom, if her bio dad is not going to be here, it doesn't matter, because I'm here. And when I tell you, that man meant every word that he said. Not only was he the first person to hold my mom's hand after I was born and be there for her and be there with her during her postpartum journey, he was also somebody who was there to be for every milestone I had in my life. And I don't think y'all understand how important it is to have a father in a child's life, especially a good father, because you can't just sit there and be like, oh, having a dad. No, having a good father figure or father in a child's life is so pivotal to them, because having that man in my life, I don't know who I would have been had he not been there. I don't know how I would have turned out had he not truly been my dad. But I digress. Every single birthday, every event, prom, every graduation, with the exception of my high school graduation, because he wasn't able to get there in time because of conflicts, but that is the only time he's ever missed an event for me. Every graduation, every event, every dance, every gymnastics competition, everything, he was there. Even when he lived in different states, even when he was doing whatever he was doing, he always was there when I needed him to be there. Every birthday, me and everybody else used to get this call, but specifically to me and my mom, he will always sing happy birthday in the church choir voice. All right. He always was super involved in the church when I was a kid, but he always sang happy birthday with the vibrato like you wouldn't even know. And I wish I could have gotten a recording of him singing happy birthday to me. But sadly, I did not have, well, iPhone didn't have the feature at the time when I was able to get that call. But I also, although my mom does the birthday call, and she can't sing as well as my dad did, so, she does give me the birthday call. I don't really like my birthdays too much anymore. Some days, hold on, because I'm crying. My birthdays aren't something I enjoy as much anymore. And that's because I don't get that call anymore. Because when I wake up, the first person to have always called me without fail at 8 o'clock in the morning, no matter the time zone, was him. And when you've had that happen to you for 18 years of your life, even if 7 years pass and you don't have that happen anymore, you still wake up with that imprinted into your memory, because it is a core memory. A core memory that is sadly just a memory again. And it will only ever be a memory. Like, it sucks. It's truly just a distant memory at this point. And I wish it wasn't. But I miss my birthday being something that meant something to me, because now they're not as sweet as they used to be. It's not only just because I became an adult, but because when you have somebody that's excited for you to be alive another year, because essentially that's what it is, just like, woo, you made it. But for him, it was always a pivotal moment, besides it being a moment for my mother. And I'm not gonna lie to you, it's hard to talk about it without tearing up, but It's so hard for me to like my birthdays anymore because I still wake up and I still think that he's going to call me, and he hasn't been able to call me for 7 years. The day before May 1st happened, I got a call from him. I would like to let it be known, not only from the photos that you see, those are the photos that were always imprinted in my brain when a memory of him pops up, because that is the version of him I always had. He was always well dressed, always well groomed, always made sure he was that guy. I'm not gonna lie to you. Like, my dad had really great style. He always had a specific look exclusive to him, and he didn't play around. He made sure he was primed and prepped to the nines, and without fail, he looked fantastic. The day before May 1st had happened, I got a call, and it was a FaceTime call, and it was from a family member that I had never met before, but I had thankfully got to meet after the fact, and it was him. He made sure that he called me in the last moments where he had even the slightest bit of energy. Mind you, I was getting notifications from my grandmother and my aunt that he wasn't doing well, and I had booked a flight to Atlanta as early as I could possibly get there, and I said I was going to be there. 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 I told him I'm going to see him before the inevitable happened. But he knew he wasn't going to make it that long. So he called. And in that FaceTime call, I think that will stay in my memory in his final moments, because that was him, and he was himself, but he could barely speak. Crazy how I understood everything he wanted to say. Like, I understood everything of what he wanted to say. He made sure he could talk to me in a way that I could understand him. And I made sure that I took the time to wait things out and speak with him. But the look in his... You would think that 7 years later I'd be a little bit better to talk about this. There was a look in his eyes that I hadn't recognized before, but I had seen it in other people when I spoke to them for the very last time. And I was telling him about how I was gonna make it to Atlanta to come and see him. I told him about how if he just hold on a little bit longer, I'll be able to see him again and be there. But on that FaceTime call, he made sure he told me that he loved me and that he will always love me, and he was proud of me and everything that I did. He will always be proud, even if he's not there anymore. And I was in denial because, oh God, how do you confront the fact that your parent is dying when you're only 19 years old? It's truly one of those things where it's like you don't want to acknowledge it because you don't want to feel it, because you don't want it to hurt. But grief is such a big emotion that, you know, when it's coming towards you and you're trying to like delay it or delay that feeling or delay whatever that's going to put you through, man, I got the call the next morning that he was no longer with me. I had told my grandma, and I had asked her, I was like, what do you mean he's gone? Like, I was supposed to be there. I was supposed to see him one more time. It was supposed to be a moment that I could actually hug him, but she said, I'm sorry, baby, but he's gone. My God, was that a crazy ass, that was a crazy ass emotion that hit me. In the first hour, I just curled up in bed. I went to sleep. And I would like to also let it be known, I had just lost my job at the time too, and I was unemployed. I was not doing well in school because I was stressed out because my dad was dying, so duh, I wasn't doing well. And it was just, a lot was declining at once. And his death on May 1st, waking up, getting the call that he was gone, I didn't say anything to anyone. I just took a moment and stopped. Everything that I was thinking, everything that I was feeling, everything that I was going through, it was just a wave of everything. And the first one is denial. Like, I just didn't confront it at the moment because I'm like, this isn't real. This isn't happening to me. It can't happen to me. I'm young. He was young. This isn't a real thing in a real situation that's actively going on to happen. But it did. And 7 years later, it still feels shitty because it's just like, you'll remember somebody that you love most is no longer here. And like I said, it's been 7 years since he's been gone, and it still hurts like how it did the first day. I think I'm gonna finish the outro to this video another time. I need a different setting, guys. When I was last recording, which wasn't that long ago, it was like a couple of days ago, but it was enough for me to kind of like reset, rewind, and decompress from the last recording because this is a heavy topic to talk about. And I'm a little bit more level-headed than when I once was. I feel like I need to talk from the perspective that I'm in now, because swinging back and forth from being super, super emotional to being upset, because what happened at his funeral that I will be talking about did upset me very deeply and made me so angry. And I felt like that just wasn't healthy to go from like sobbing and crying and getting emotional to being really, really angry and kind of like going into another version of upset, but more rooted in anger rather than me kind of just talking about the situation. I want to talk about the post that I had made the day that he died. On the day that it happened, this was the first time I had talked about it publicly, but this was also the first time I've ever really like talked about grieving somebody that I had lost like that, because my dad was such a pivotal person in my life. I'm very quiet about my family and my personal life when it comes to social media, because I don't feel like I should hold space for people to be in my business when it comes to that type of stuff. I never thought I'd have to say goodbye so early to you, but God had other plans. I just want to thank you for being my dad, even though you have never even had to take the role upon yourself. Ever since I can remember, you were always at every major event in my life, even at birth. So I'm sorry I didn't get to see you in person one last time, but I thank you for everything you've ever done for me. Rest easy, Dad. That was truly a very vulnerable moment for me in general, and I did not think that I was gonna be able to do it, but I did it. And some people felt like I posting the one thing and kind of going MIA about it and not talking about it publicly was weird, because they're like, well, why aren't you grieving? Why are you just like continuing to live your life? Aren't you sad? Aren't you upset? I no longer speak to that person that did that, FYI. But at the time when it had happened, I was just like, do I not look sad enough? I feel like I'm pretty damn sad. I feel like my grief is very apparent. I'm just not crying about it, you know? And that was kind of wild to me, because I'm just like, well, am I not sad enough? Do I not feel like, does it come across like I'm just living my life? Because I feel like I kind of went quiet on social media and didn't post as much as I used to after that. Come to find out, that person was mentally ill. The person that had said that to me was mentally ill and is not doing the greatest in life right now, but that's also because life was lifing and did what it did. So after he died, he had 2 funerals. The first funeral, well, I went to both of them, obviously, but the first funeral was in Atlanta. And in Atlanta, I saw my grandma, I saw my auntie, who was living and still is kind of like a little bit more nomadic now, but was living in Arizona at the time, and a cousin that lived in Georgia that I had never met before, but like they were very close. My dad and her, I'm not going to say her name because it's family and I don't want y'all to go and look for her, but they were very close. They lived together. She let him stay in the home, or in her home, right before he passed, and I remember we were all just kind of like there, like she had literally let him stay there until he passed, and she had to take a couple days off of work because, I mean, the closest family member that he had at that time, yeah, it was hard on everybody the day that it happened and the days following. But I remember we went there, and I had took a flight out to Atlanta. I'd want to say a day or two, sometime that week after he had passed, because I was planning on going regardless. Like, I was going to go see him. My mom knew I needed to go see him because we knew what was coming, and sadly I didn't make it. There was a pastor in Atlanta that my dad was very close to. I do not remember his name. Your brain blocks it out because it was just an emotion you don't want to reconfront, you know? But I remember speaking to him, and I remember he it was just me and him. My grandma was off, you know, arranging stuff for the funeral. Like, they were in the house, but it was just me and him. And he's like, I need to give you your time. Because in a weird way, I was kind of like on autopilot. I was just like going through the motions and not really confronting how I felt, because it was one of those things where you just blocked it out because this is a big thing. This is a big emotion you don't want to feel or have to confront. And right now I have to confront it. He was like, I want you to know his death is not his final place. His death is not the end, because you're still here, because you still carry his legacy. And even in death, his love will always live through you. And at the time, I didn't get that. At the time, I was just like, how? You know, it was just one of those things that I couldn't even fathom what that looked like, because I was going through a weird time of being a teenager transitioning into my early adulthood and trying to find my identity and trying to find who I was, to the point that the idea that death, which is a finalizing thing in my mind, death, it ends stuff. You don't come back once that comes to you. How can someone who is no longer here physically have any emotion or any memories or anything that lives through me? Obviously now I'm talking about the man. I'm solidifying him and immortalizing him in a way by talking about him. And even years down the line, there will be random people who will come across my social media or come across whatever video or whatever I make. They'll remind me, they're like, oh my goodness, I loved your father. And I knew your father, and your father loved you. You were his pride and joy. I couldn't remember why I remembered who you were, but I remembered your father, and you don't understand how much you were loved. And I never forgot it. That conversation obviously sticks with me to this day, because you don't realize the impact that anybody can have on you, whether it be a parental figure or somebody that has raised you or somebody that is a very big staple in your life. Choosing to instill a mindset and memory that you will continue to live through, you can't even put some of those things into words. That legacy and those people that are sadly no longer here, that didn't get to see you get to this point, it matters that you make it. Even if you make it in a way that doesn't necessarily look like what they might have wanted you to do. Because I'm going to be honest with you, I went through it after his death in a way that I got into an abusive relationship. I had got out of that abusive relationship. I was out of school because I kept flunking out, because I couldn't focus, because I couldn't stop crying and grieving and going through the process of understanding, how do I keep living without this person? And I'm not going to sit there and tell you it gets better, because you're going to cry. You're going to get really, really upset and be really, really hurt that you can't just get on the phone and call them anymore. Or sadly, if you don't have any audio recordings or video recordings or something to go back to look at, you can't go look at that anymore. And it's always going to suck. It's going to hurt. It's going to feel disgusting and make you be like, ugh, I don't like this. This hurts. And this is a unpleasant feeling, but then you remember all the good things. Although sometimes it can come with rose-colored lenses, the good always outweighs the bad when you truly love somebody and that person truly loved you. And I was loved. I was very, very loved. I wrote out the details of what happened in the Chicago funeral just because I needed to make sure I make my point very clear when I say what I'm about to say. Because, let me tell you this right now. I'm not playing those games. That man has known peace, but God blessed me with the mouth and vocal cords and has yet to put me on mute. So till that happens, I'm going to use both of them. And you're going to hear my mouth. At his funeral in Chicago, a family member who he never liked nor associated with because he condemned his homosexuality took it upon himself to say he died paying for the sins of his life. We all had a moment of shock and kept silent because this is my grandma's regular church and the head pastor does not hold the same sentiments at all. He's never once done this. Even in death, he was still being given judgment by someone who is attempting to lead a church and condemn those who he deems lesser than him, using God as a shield. I'm not going to name the person because I don't believe in giving airtime to people like that. But I will say, you can sit behind any microphone in any church and say that you are a vessel of God and you are speaking his word. You can pretend like you're opening the Bible and reading off the word of God. You can pretend like you are holier than thou. But when judgment day comes, when you have to go and meet your maker and look at him and say, I stood in place of another human being, an entire congregation of human beings, and spoke your word because I was your vessel. Watch how fast you end up in hell. Because you are not God. You do not get to judge in the place of God. And you arming a church and weaponizing it at a man's funeral, knowing that man both did not like you, did not respect you, but knew you were never, ever gonna amount to any type of good in life just because you stood behind a podium and called yourself a pastor. I just want to say, wherever you're at in life, wherever that fat beer belly you carry around jiggles on, that disgusting snaggletooth and hot breath you spew, trying to say that you have the word of God and you're anointed, just know, if you continue on the path of trying to condemn and judge others, while you yourself are not a good or decent man, know that that will come to bite you soon. And you will have to pay for that. But I don't want to end the video focusing in on a negative experience. I want to end the video where I tell you about how much that man loved God. My father, when he was a child, before he came out and let the world know who he truly was and his truth, he always told everybody he wanted to be a preacher. He went to the Navy and tried to live the straight and narrow and tried to deny his identity because he was always told it was a sin and a sinful thing to be who he was. But my dad wasn't a bad person. By no means a saint, not claiming them to be such a thing. But he always seeked out a church, looked to God, and in moments where I was having a really, really hard time, he really, really, really wanted me to love the church. But as I grow older, I know that I have to be mindful of the church, but the church is not my connection to God. I know that a lot of people are condemned or feel oppressed or unhappy with the sanctity that we try to put behind church, but God will never hate you because that's not in God's will. That's not in any monotheic God's will. They're all forgiving. They're all trying to hope that the world can end up in a better place. They're all giving the tools that we want to have happen to us. But the reality is, the church is not the end to God. It's just another stepping stone to get a little bit closer. You don't need a church to love God. You do, however, need more than a church to love somebody, regardless of whether or not you agree with their way of life. I think I'm always going to miss him. Every day is never going to get easier than the next, but it will always get me a step closer to where I want to be. I hope nobody ever has to go through the same predicament that I did, but I do know it is a rite of passage in life. Just know that when you're grieving and when you're in those moments where it's really, really hard to process any bit of it, you were never alone. You're not the first person to feel this emotion. We don't really talk so much about how we feel either. Hence why we're all kind of disconnected and side-eyeing each other nowadays, because we don't really tell each other how we feel. Hopefully, this video can make you think of him, but also make you think that grieving is sadly a part of life, and it doesn't make you a bad person or any less of a person because you don't know how to grieve properly. We don't really have a rubric for things like that. I'll see you in another video and another time, hopefully on a bit of a higher note. I just want you guys to know how much I love my dad. See you in the next one.